reading for today is about who? Moses and the Israelites. And yesterday we learned that God is in charge. But do the Israelites always obey him? No. What about, do they always trust him? Well, but God has been taking care of his people, right? While they travel from Egypt to the promised land. Do you guys remember what the promised land is? God promised their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Abraham that he and his family would own and live in the land of Canaan. This was the land that God promised to them. But for 200 years, the Israelites had lived in Egypt. While they were slaves in Egypt, other people came and took over the land of Canaan. Now the Israelites have finally gotten back to the promised land. Do you think that this is the end of their adventure?
We have arrived at Canaan, the promised land. But before we go in, we're going to send spies to find out more about our new home.
Each family chose a few to go out and be a spy. Joshua, the commander of the army, his friend Caleb, and 10 others were chosen.
You all have been chosen for a very special job. God told me to send you on a mission as spies. You will go into the land and see what the land is like. See if the people are strong and if the cities are fortresses.
So, Joshua and some of the others, they went to see what their new home would be like. They looked to see if it would be easy to grow food. And they looked to see the people who live there. What are their cities like? Do they have strong fortresses? How hard will it be to conquer back their promised land? After 40 days of searching out, they were looking to see what it was like. And after 40 days, the spies came back. And they were carrying something. They brought back the food that grows in the promised land.
Well, I guess that answers the first question. It looks like food grows very well in Canaan. I mean, I've never seen grapes that big before. They're almost as big as my head.
Canaan is beautiful, Moses. There was lots of food like this. But the cities, they have tall, strong walls.
Speaking of tall and strong, you should have seen the Anakites. Those guys were giants.
Giants? No one said anything about fighting giants.
That sounds scary. What if we just go back to Egypt?
Why would you even think that? Canaan is a wonderful place to live, and God will fight for us. There is nothing to worry about.
But the people did not trust God, so God was going to send them back into the wilderness.
Because you are not faithful to God, we will have to go back to live in the wilderness for 40 more years before we can come back to live in the promised land.
The Israelites were sent for 40 years into the wilderness as a punishment because the people did not trust God to be their strength and to fight their enemies. The Israelites didn't trust God, and so back into the wilderness they went. And eventually they ran out of water. This seems to be like a problem they keep having, don't you think? Yeah. Do you think they learned to trust God this time? No. They started to complain.
I am so thirsty. I wish we had stayed in Egypt.
Me too. I would rather be a slave than die of thirst. When Moses heard the people complaining, he went to God and to ask him what to do. And God told Moses to gather the people around the big rock and to speak to the rock, and water would come out. Has God done a miracle like this before?
Yes.
Yeah. Before, God had Moses hit a rock with his staff and water came out. But this time, God told Moses just to speak to the rock. Do you think Moses trusted God?
Yes.
Listen, you rebels, must we bring water out of the rock for you?
Water came out of the rock, but did Moses speak to the rock like God had told him to do? No, he hit the rock. Sometimes Moses wasn't obedient to God, and sometimes Moses was like the children of Israel, and he didn't trust God like he should. Even the leader made mistakes. For a while, the Israelites traveled through the wilderness following Moses and trusting God. But after a while, the people started complaining again because they were discouraged.
Hey, Moses. Why did you bring us out from Egypt if you were just going to let us die out here in the desert? There's no water, and all we have to eat is this worthless manna.
The Israelites were more than just complaining this time. They were rebelling against God. They were ignoring all the times that God had protected them, and they were being disrespectful. To teach the Israelites a lesson, God stopped protecting their camp so they could see what it would be like in the wilderness without God. The Israelites were so used to God's protection that they didn't think about all the things in the desert that could be dangerous.
It bit me out! It burns!
When God stopped protecting the Israelites, venomous snakes started getting into the camp. When anyone got bitten, it felt like burning, and they got sick and very sick from the bites.
What do you think why this is happening? It is because we disrespected God. Maybe if we ask for forgiveness, God will forgive us.
At Mount Sinai, when God gave the Israelites the 10 Commandments, he had made a deal with the Israelites. If they obeyed God, then he would protect them. When the Israelites disobeyed God, they lost that protection, and God allowed the fiery snakes to get into the camp. Now the Israelites need to ask for forgiveness.
Moses, we have sinned and disobeyed God. Please ask God to forgive us and take away all the snakes.
When Moses prayed and asked God to forgive the Israelites for their disobedience and save them from the fiery snakes, God told Moses to make a snake out of metal and put it up in the camp where everyone could see it. Anyone who looked at the snake would be healed from their snake bite. But not everyone obeyed God, and some of them wouldn't even look. Only those who obeyed God were healed from the bite of the fiery snake.
Moses, why did we make a metal snake? Wasn't one of the laws God gave us specifically not to make any idols to worship?
Well, the snake is not what is healing the people. It is a test to see if the people will listen and obey God. If they trust him and do what he says, then he will forgive and heal them.
Oh, even though everyone was complaining and disobeying God, he still forgives us.
Yes, God loves all of us so much that he will always forgive us. There is nothing we can do that will make God stop loving us.
I'm so glad that we can always ask God for forgiveness.
It is a good feeling to know how much God loves each and every one of us.
God is such an awesome God that even when we disobey him, he still loves us. Sometimes we make choices and we have to deal with the consequences of our actions. Like the Israelites, they had to deal with the snakes. But as soon as they asked for forgiveness, God got rid of the snakes and he healed them. God loves us so much that he forgives us too. Aren't you glad that we have such an awesome God? Yeah, God is awesome. He loves us. Do you have a question?
Isn't the metal snake in the hospital sign?
It might be. I think so. That is true. It is a symbol of healing. God gave them a way to be healed. Anyone who would look up and remember that God was in charge, then they will be healed. Well, today we have learned about having an awesome God, and I think we're going to continue learning about that in our activities.